Hello and welcome to this episode of Superhero Ethics. We're coming to you live from the People's Republic of Minnesota, where the snow is bad, but the ice is worse. But Marvel has served up a little bit of distraction for us. We're talking about Wonderman. And if you saw that Marvel was doing a show about someone called Wonderman and had no idea what this was about, congratulations, you're in the same boat as me. But if you're like, oh, I'm an old hat at Wonderman, I know all the comics, I'm super excited for this, well, then you're going to love my two guests because I have Will and Steve from Hype is my because I almost said Hype is my ethics. I have Will and Steve from the Hype is my superpower podcast that does deep dive on Marvel comics, and we're here to talk about episode 1 of the show and the comic books. So there's going to be spoilers for what happens in the comic books. I haven't gone beyond episode 1, and we're not going to talk about anything beyond that, but we're going to talk about like sort of what can we expect from the show based on the comic books and based on episode 1, and maybe what we cannot expect given how they are or are not overlapping, and a whole bunch of things like that. So Will and Steve, say hello. How you guys doing?
Hello. Nice to meet you. Or see you again. It's been a long time. Not meet you, Matthew. We're old friends. But the listeners, yeah, it's been quite a while since we did a guest spot here. Happy to be back.
Yeah, glad to have you guys back.
Yeah, thank you for the invite. It's gotten to the point where when a new Marvel property drops, a thought crosses my mind of like, ooh, I wonder if there's going to be a superhero ethics episode about this.
Yeah, awesome. I love being one of your first stops to come check it out. I also recommend people check out the MCU cast, but we love to talk about some of the ethical questions. And so let's just dive right in. I am going to have some spoilers for episode 1, and we're definitely going to talk about the comic books here. But from episode 1 of the show, this feels like not that the MCU has jumped the shark, but that we've kind of entered the next phase of MCU in that we're now doing almost satires about the process of making MCU shows and movies, and we're talking about it as Hollywood insiders and stuff like this. And so we get this whole episode about this guy who is struggling to be an actor. He meets Trevor Slattery, who of course people will remember as he was the actor who played the Mandarin. Some people still look at him and think he's a terrorist. He's had quite an evolution. He mentions at one point in the episode that he hasn't had a drink in 13 years, which some people on social media jumped in to say, wait a minute, no, he had a drink in the Iron Man movie came out 13 years ago or more. That's horrifying. So yep. Yeah. We're old. Yeah. But yeah, so, and that's an obvious tie-in, but other than that, this does not seem to be in any way an MCU show. It seems to be a show about people making MCU type stuff, except that we get a reference from the director where he's talking about making shows about superheroes in a world that has superheroes. And at the very end, we learn Trevor has befriended this guy who I assume is going to become Wonderman because he has some great amount of power that we don't know about yet. So is that an accurate description, you guys think, of what we saw in episode 1?
Yeah, it's really a show. I mean, I think the MCU has been moving in this direction for a little while of we're not exclusively making superhero shows. And we kind of see, to some extent, that's kind of been baked in from very early, like Guardians of the Galaxy is a sci-fi, space opera that happens to have, people in costumes in it. But if you took away Marvel, you wouldn't really call it a superhero movie. Right. And on and on. Winter Soldier is a Cold War spy espionage thriller that has a guy in a suit in it. The links to superheroism as a genre has been kind of tenuous and fading for a while. She-Hulk is more of like a legal procedural. And then this just kind of goes all the way there, where this is a character drama about a struggling actor, and not at all about it's almost incidental. It's incidental to what the show is about, that he has superheroes, and it's only tangentially related to what gets the plot moving.
Right. So I want to dive more into that, but then let's start. So I assume that's what the comic book Wonderman is about, right? A struggling actor who is only really kind of tangentially linked to being a superhero.
Sometimes, rarely.
Pretty much, for the most part. Yeah. Simon Williams in the comics is an actor, and he between projects ends up getting powers. We'll talk about it later.
We'll talk about
he gets power. He gets powers, and then but he's still doing the actor thing in the same sense that there are established characters in Marvel who very much have real world air quotes jobs. Like you have your Jen Walters doing the attorney thing. You have Alison Blair, and those cohorts all doing pop star stuff. You've got Simon Williams doing the actor thing. There's and the the fact that they have powers and connections in the superhero world keeps on bringing them into superhero stories. But almost anytime you have a solo title with that character, it's always about their civilian life stuff.
Yeah. And I would say that, and so when we talk about the origins of Wonder Man, I'll be talking a little bit more about his first, 30, 40 years, and we'll be talking a little more about the last 20 or so. But I would say Wonder Man is interesting to me in that he did start out as more of like a superhero in the superhero world and then left it to go to acting. Which it's not like he had a great job that he was pulled away from. He was fully enmeshed in the superhero world, didn't want to do it anymore, and has more or less fully reestablished himself as a character, as a guy who does other things. And that's interesting to me because there aren't a whole lot of those.
And in the comics, to what extent is his acting kind of a self-referential, almost fourth wall breaking joke about comic movies? Because certainly in this, that was the impression. He starts out on a show where basically he's a guy who's there to say a couple of lines before he gets his head bitten off by the monster lady who's a part of this TV show they're making about some superhero, I guess, who's fighting.
It's American Horror Story, yeah.
Oh, yeah, American Horror Story. Thank you.
Yeah.
So they do separate it out that it's not comic book necessarily, but it's definitely genre. And the idea of someone coming onto the set of American Horror Story or an MCU show or a DC show and wanting to have all of this character motivation and backstory, and the director kind of being like, dude, you're just here to get your head chopped off, beaten off, feels like a very real thing that, a hyperbole, but still. Is that in the books, the comic books as well, that it's kind of a inside joke almost about, the actors in genre movies and stuff like that?
I mean, my knee-jerk answer is no.
Yeah, nothing I've read.
We never, I don't know if I've ever even seen a Simon Williams movie poster in the comics. Him doing acting and stuff, from my experience, it's just been an excuse to not have him on the team. He's off doing other things. Right now, he's a pacifist, and so he, on top of doing the acting thing, really doesn't want to fight. And the couple of times you've seen him when he's forced to fight, he's pushing people because he's got his super strength and stuff. So he's
standard superhero package
out of the way instead of punching. And so he's just finding every excuse not to get involved in the fight. And so it's just I can't stay because I have a screen call in 20 minutes over in LA. Sorry, I gotta go. Oh well, okay, bye. I don't think so. Wonder Man hasn't had a solo title in at least 20 years, if ever. And I don't think we've ever had a storyline that focused on his acting career and it getting in the way of superheroics.
They have, but yeah, I'm looking through the wiki here today. He had a mini series in 2006 that was kind of along those lines.
Exactly 20 years. There you go.
Nice.
right around the Avengers disassembled time. So yeah, kind of perfectly dodging your history of reading. He is a bit player in the terms in the world of the Avengers, but he does go all the way back. His first appearance was Avengers 9. Back in the 60s, he was wearing the costume that you see in the retro film that young Simon Williams is watching in the opening scene,
Right.
minus the silly tanks on the back on his back. And he was kind of, he was duped into being a villain to start, actually, or like he had bad luck with his family's business. His brother is a really mean dude named who goes by the villain named Grim Reaper. Grim Reaper is not an interesting villain except for his connection to Simon. That's like really
Okay.
the only thing he has going for him. And so he got caught up in some bad news stuff with Baron Zemo, who shot him with an ionic ray because it's the 60s and you get powers from whatever. Nobody really bothered to understand or explain what ionic energy means, just that he has it. This is the source of his superpowers. His superpowers are everything. And so he's told by Zemo that he will die if he doesn't keep working for Zemo, that there's an antidote, like the procedure that gave him his powers is also going to kill him unless he gets regular antidotes from Zemo. He has a moral crisis of conscience, turns against Zemo, dies very quickly. But it turns out he's not dead, ho ho ho. But he stays apparently dead for a very long time, like 100 issues. And during this period of time, people are like, oh yeah, remember Wonderman? Yeah, whatever. When the Vision breaks free from his creator Ultron, his brain waves are based off of Simon Williams.
Okay.
And so this kind of like really ties those two together. The Vision's humanity is based on Simon. And that leads to love triangles once Simon is eventually brought back with Wanda, and like a entwining with those two characters. And so yeah, when he comes back, he's like really personally haunted by the time he was dead and his memories of being dead. And everyone's going out for these dangerous missions, and he tries every once in a while and he just kind of freezes. He can't do it. He's like, I don't want to do this superhero thing. I don't want to be in this violent world, this violent life. What else can I do with these powers? This kind of like marks me as different. He's got these crazy eyes. He wears sunglasses all the time. He's one of the visually most 70s 80s like once his return in the 70s 80s, he kind of, that becomes his look going forward. He's got these big chunky glasses, double-breasted suit, his hair is all gelled up. And so so that kind of leads him to be an actor along the time that the Avengers start up their LA team. And that's a way to kind of connect that together. He dies again, he comes back again, blah, 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 blah. But that kind of sets the status quo for who he is going forward.
So a couple of questions. First, you said his power set is everything?
I mean, more or less.
Okay.
Okay. Like the current Simon Williams, well, okay, that's a lie. For a long time, Simon Williams was just a being of energy, of ionic energy. And so,
but that means
when
anything.
you have, exactly. So when you have something that's incredibly undefined, you can do anything.
Right.
So your classic super strength, your energy shots, flight, super speed, but then it's like he can phase through walls, and then maybe he can change the shape of his body, or like just whatever kind of fits well with as long as I control my ionic particles and I understand what's going on, then I can do this. And it's like, oh, okay, well, oh sure. But he's had multiple feats that he's done once.
He's got the Superman starter package plus anything that you want the plot requires.
Right.
And like he teleported, he, changed his size and shape. Like it's just he made fire, like whatever.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
given all that, I can kind of understand why the MCU hasn't really gone near him for a long time. Also it sounds like he was not the most high selling name in the Marvel comics. But also just, they started out, at least, again, many, many years ago when they started Iron Man, with this kind of pseudo-scientific, we're doing ground level hero, we're doing, not ground level, but like, people who can be kind of, sort of, if you squint, scientifically explained, and at least with specific power sets. Now, they've gotten further and further away from that, obviously, but I can see that. But now to my other question, because it does seem like then what we're doing here is a pretty big departure so far. Again, we've only seen episode 1. Some people may have watched ahead, but I'm only talking about that. But you mentioned how in the show, Simon grows up going to these kind of like 60s, 70s, superhero type things where he sees this incredibly cheesy character of Wonderman on the screen and is very inspired by him. Is that, again, also completely just made for this? Is that not from the comics?
No.
Yeah, I think it's just a way to homage original Wonder Man in the 21st century.
Yeah, and lampshade, ground this in. We're doing a show about Hollywood, about the making of the sausage, and also giving him a scene with his father, who
There's also like a lot of when you have a number of characters who have done a lot of costume changes, they find ways to do a quick homage to like their first appearance kind of thing.
Luke Cage finding the 70s
The
Power Man
tiara,
outfit when he's
the tiara for Luke Cage, the jewel costume for Jessica Jones, the the traditional Sokovian witch for in WandaVision for the Halloween episode. Like they do that, and so how it read to me was like, oh, okay, so we're doing like a Duck Dodgers, whatever, Buck Rogers, whatever his name is. Looney Tunes is Duck Dodgers, but whatever. So classic space hero man with a crazy over the top costume, just happens to also be exactly what Wonder Man looked like in the 60s.
Right. And so it's not so much they don't really lean into the self-referentiality of the entertainment business, but I can see it being a useful jumping off point because, being an actor doesn't have much valence in a comic book, but it does a lot more in a TV show.
Right.
It's not like he went to become a comics artist or, an inker or something.
Right. Well, and especially because I'm guessing, again, this has nothing to do with the comics because this character isn't really from the comics. You have in the MCU already established a fan favorite character who is an actor, the Trevor Slattery part, who a lot of comic book real fans, I don't know where you guys stand on this, don't like him because of like how much it screwed up the actual Mandarin, although I think Shang-Chi fixed that a lot. But I'm guessing there's no Trevor, because that whole idea that the Mandarin was an actor does not exist anywhere in the comic books, and the Trevor Slattery character doesn't exist in the comic books, right?
He doesn't. I love Trevor Slattery. I think he's a great character.
He's fantastic. I was so much I did not mind that bait and switch on the Mandarin.
No, I thought it was really fun. And there's no way you could actually do
that I liked. But no, you can't do a racial caricature character like Mandarin and not offend over 1 billion people. So the way they did Iron Man or Mandarin in Iron Man 3 was perfectly fine. And it was in fact I feel like problems. But I also feel like they could have leaned into it more in terms of like what statement they were making of Aldous Killian being the man behind the Mandarin and all this other stuff, like, and done a bigger impact of like corporate type stuff. But whatever, it's neither here nor there. But watching the first episode and having Trevor show up felt weird to me. Only from a like, okay, Simon Williams is an actor. Oh, well, there's this other actor in the MCU. Let's have him show up. And I was like, well, it's odd. It felt too, because like last time we saw him was in Shang-Chi, and he's over in Fantasyland, and then and Shang-Chi lives in San Francisco. So like I guess we don't know where he went after the dragons fight
Right.
in Shang-Chi, but just have him show up at the one theater. I mean, I get that there's a phone call after, but like it felt weird until the last scene.
Yeah, I definitely was kind of like, is there really no other actors in this world? Like, and so when we found out that no, it wasn't just a weird coincidence that the two actors who've ever been mentioned were at this one audition call, especially because generally if you're auditioning for one role, you don't have people coming in to audition for other roles at the same time. But then when we find out, no, he's actually doing this intentionally and there's some kind of, secret shenanigans happening, I was like, oh, okay. They know that would be a really dumb coincidence to try and convince us of.
Right.
I appreciate that they're not doing that.
Yeah.
I did like, I like and don't like this character that they're giving Simon, where he's like, for lack of a better term, he's kind of like the Kamala Khan of acting, where he's just like he's a super fan of all of the process and everything and all the thought that goes into every single character and every single act and every single scene.
Except, unlike Kamala, he's terrible. He's atrocious actor. He's so bad. And because of that process.
He doesn't see it, right? Yeah, because he spends so much time in the how, he doesn't spend any time in the do.
I mean, I thought when he does he does do that breathing out trick that Trevor teaches him and gives them up, like that's good acting.
Sure. Yeah. He's got
also
it.
Imagine it's hard to be, like, from our perspective, it's hard to be an actor as a struggling actor. Like,
it's hard.
That
it is, because
weird.
you have to be able to play someone who's bad at acting but could be good at acting. You have to be bad at acting intentionally in very specific and fixable ways, and that was kind of fun to watch, is him like making that switch and using the coaching and the encouragement from the man. I'm just going to keep calling him Ben Kingsley, who is himself. Like, it works for me because Ben Kingsley is himself an incredibly decorated, legendary actor, playing Trevor Slattery. And so he fits, like, his out of the story role fits in the story role so well. And I saw in the marketing that he was going to be in it. So when they meet in the movie theater, I'm like, all right, this is how they get together. And I didn't really think much of it.
Well, I just want to say one other thing about that, kind of going to what you'd been saying, Will, about the Mandarin and the racial issues and stuff. I don't blame Ben Kingsley for this necessarily. It was, early in his career, it was 40 years ago now, but he is an incredible actor who's been decorated for a number of things. One of the most highly acclaimed roles for which he was decorated, I think he won an Academy Award, but certainly has received great acclaim, was him as a white man in brownface playing Gandhi. The South Asian, but incredible historical figure. So yeah, there's just all sorts of layers. When he played the Mandarin as this like white guy pretending to be an Asian guy, there were just all kinds of layers involved there.
Yes. Absolutely. And so he's great. His performance is great. He's always stolen every scene that he's been in, as long as he's been in the MCU. So I'm just happy for more Trevor Slattery, more Ben Kingsley.
Nice. I also thought I love the self-referential stuff, and I actually, let me back up on that. I want to talk more about that. I want to talk more about the self-referential stuff, but it sounds like there's still a lot more of Wonderman's history we haven't gotten to. Will, do you want to kind of pick up that baton?
I've got a couple things.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
can. One is just
let me do that intro again.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to get into all that. I've got some questions more about the episode itself, but it sounded like there was a couple more decades of his history that you guys wanted to talk about first.
Truthfully, not a ton. I would say the one thing that I would want to focus on is just what relationships he has with other characters in Marvel. The relationship with Vision really developed to the point where, they consider each other brothers. They're very close after, Simon and Wanda kind of had a will they or won't they during a period of time where Vision, much as he is now in the MCU, was stripped of his personality and was the sort of all white, emotionless Vision. Just because of, again, Vision's based on Simon. So they once Vision was restored, Simon was jealous for a little bit. He got over it. Everything's peachy keen, hunky dory between them. They're all buds. And then the other close connection that Simon Williams has is actually with the X-Man Beast. They were both members of the Avengers at the same time, and they became best buds. Like kind of drinking buddies, less serious about the superheroing. Beast was a little more of a happy-go-lucky character in those days, but even continuing to today, his interests are often much more about science and learning and poetry and just sort of like the world outside of superheroing, which I think fits really well with Simon, who doesn't want to do that crap at all.
Right. Well, so you did answer my next question, which is I was going to wonder, do we finally have a Marvel character who has never been an Avenger? But it sounds like the answer is no.
No, he is a founding member of the West Coast Avengers.
He was a main team member before that.
He was on the regular Avengers, and then he founded West Coast Avengers with Iron Man and Hank Pym and Tigra and Moon Knight.
Really goofy team.
It was actually West Coast Avengers is actually the first team book that I owned multiple issues of way back in the day. Wonderman just doesn't show up much, and a lot of it is just he's just not an active player. Like even in like the big crossover events when the world is in peril, he doesn't show up. So it's like something will happen, and sometimes I guess I should throw out there his brother Grim Reaper. If memory serves, his brother only really became a supervillain after Simon died, and he blamed the Avengers for it, and so he wanted to take his anger out on the Avengers. So down the line, are we going to see something like that? I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, but like Grim Reaper, one of his hands is a giant scythe, and he's got energy based powers, and I don't imagine they're going to do. Obviously, they're not going to adapt every single thing from the comics into the movies, if for no other reason than the fact that Vision isn't based off of Simon Williams' personality, and like there's all kinds of connections, and we don't have a Beast yet, and so like there's plenty of the things that Wonderman is known for currently, because like the current Beast in comics is the Avengers version of Beast.
Long story.
It's comic-y, but like the things that he's most connected to mainstream comics, like in the main like continuity of comics, aren't a thing in the MCU. So they kind of have a long established character that's a completely blank slate for the MCU. So they could do whatever they want.
Totally.
I think it's fun. I like it.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah, and that does make it seem like a really kind of fun project, because it feels like I said, there's always a time in a franchise when the franchise starts to go a little self-referential, and they definitely did that to some extent already with She-Hulk. So this isn't, I think, totally new, but it does feel like not necessarily that there was a huge fan, clamoring for give us Wonder Man, as much as people looked at like, we want to tell a kind of story about Hollywood, we want to tell a story that really we could tie into anything going forward. Wonderman is kind of the perfect blank canvas to do that on.
Yeah, or we want another show with Trevor Slattery. We got Ben Kingsley to sign up for a Disney Plus show. What can we put him in? Oh, this other character is an actor. Like, this is, I think, I'm sorry if this is spoilers, but as the show goes on, to me, a couple episodes in, it feels even less like a self-referentiality about Hollywood and more about a character study about a struggling actor. Like, they get really deep into acting method and like, so I have some, like, when I was 11 or so, me and Will grew up about 100 miles north of LA, and when I was 11 or so, my dad moved down there to try his hand at being an actor. And so I would see some of, he kind of lived that Simon Williams life for a couple of years of going to auditions and getting rejected, and kind of like having acting coaches and struggling with your process. And I got to see a lot of that. So it's kind of cool to see some of this story. I don't know how many people like want this. Like, it's such a specific like world to be involving yourself in this deeply, but every single shot I'm like, oh my god, this is so LA. Like, this self-tape studio that's on the second floor of a strip mall, like, I don't know, just everything, just his apartment building, everything is just so normal person LA. And it not glamour fancy Hollywood LA, but just like what it materially like looks like and feels like to live in LA. So
well, and I think that's a very interesting way of kind of expanding the brand and of testing to what extent superpowers will turn off the people who don't normally want that. I think with She-Hulk, for example, they tried very hard to get like, okay, people who don't watch superhero stuff but watched Law and Order and Ally McBeal and shows
Broad
like that.
City, even.
Yeah, will they watch this? And I think they had some success. On the flip side, right now we're obviously in a time of a lot of people are thinking about ways to act against fascism and against oppressive governments. However you see that. And I've tried to get a lot of people who I know who are very interested in those issues, but aren't Star Wars people, to watch Andor. And I've said, like, look, there's almost no lightsabers. There's no, if you just ignore the fact that like the cops are shooting lasers instead of bullets, it's basically the same as like some of these other things. And so many people I know are like, no, but it's Star Wars. I don't want to watch it. And I'll like read to them a speech and they're like, oh my God, someone needs to give that speech in our real world. And I'm like, yeah, it was given by Mon Mothma in Andor. And they're like, oh, okay, never mind. It's like, and I'm curious with it. Yeah, I'm curious. Like, and I'm not in Hollywood. I don't know. I know that within Hollywood, there's often a lot of frustration with like the role that superhero movies and comic book movies now play. And so I kind of wonder to like those Hollywood types, like to the struggling actors, to the people who are trying to get in, will they be like, awesome, this is our story? Or will they be like, fuck, why can't comic books leave our story alone? I'm just, I have no idea. I'm really curious. So if you're a struggling actor who doesn't like comic books, I don't think you're listening to this podcast, but if you are, please write in. Let us know what you think.
I would be really interested to hear an anti-Wonderman, don't touch my culture argument. That'd be really interesting to me, just from a like wow standpoint. But I mean,
again,
I do
in the show it would just be kind of a side note in the show, right? It would be like a one-off character saying a thing that kind of like fits the world but doesn't really contribute or move the show along. The show is very particularly its own thing.
And I do wonder if we're going to get some stuff like that, because it's literally a one-off. It's like a 1-second interview, but I'm just looking something up now. Hold on.
This is kind of neither here or there. But okay. Matthew, do you want to scoot your camera over for the vertical view? Do you care that much?
Yeah. There we go. And I feel like we're getting something a little bit like that. There was just a second or two, but I'm curious how you guys felt about it. we get introduced to the director Von Kovac,
Mm.
who is played by who is played by Zlatko Bunic. I hope I got that right. Wait, hold on. No, let me do that one more time. Who is played by Zlatko Buric. I hope I got that right. Who has had actually a long and storied career in both European theater and TV and movies, and also here. But many people will recognize as the Netin Putin character from the Superman movie. But he's playing Von Kovac, and he just has this like one line in an interview where he talks about why it is interesting to make superhero movies in a world where superheroes really exist. And that was something I never really thought about before, but I've talked with you guys more about how I love that kind of like, once superheroes are real, how does that change things? How does it change the Olympics? How does it change the way we look at all these different things? How does it change science? And so I don't know if we ever see him again, and don't spoil it either way, but like, I would love to hear people talk about when superheroes aren't something that only exists on comic books, but also exists on the evening news. Does that mean that superhero movies in that world are just basically cop procedurals? Do they make them just like they're exaggerations? Like I'm so fascinated by that.
Me too. I want that
Me
so bad.
three.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, so I'm obsessed with real world application of superheroes. And like I lose my mind about it when I'm reviewing comics with Steve. Anytime it happens, of just like, oh, you have teleportation. Well, you can save people from a burning building faster than anyone else. Like, it's just like, how do you take your superhero
super
and
strength,
their-
go work construction.
Yeah, like it works. You can control the weather you want. How about farming? Like, it's just there. How can you take this superhero centric thing and apply it to something tangible, something real,
something mundane?
Yeah. And so having, I totally agree. I want to dive into that more of like, you have people with superpowers. What if your bodyguard was powered? What if you have, do you have Law and Order soups like Super VU or whatever? Like, I want to dive more into that. That's why I loved about She-Hulk. That's why I love about Wonderman. Just how do you go about a civilian daily life with powers?
And like, once mind control is a real thing, what happens to gambling? What happens to privacy laws? What happens to, all this kind of stuff?
Yeah. Government's going to take their sweet time figuring it out.
I have to say that this is something that comics are much better equipped to do than shows or movies, because it's very expensive to portray superpowers in certain superpowers. It's very expensive to portray in film, and dirt cheap to portray on a page. And so if you're going to save your special effects budget for the big blowout fight scenes, you're probably not going to waste much time trying to figure out what does it look like when somebody with like Sue Storm does the dishes, right? Like, how do you use your superpowers to make just very normal mundane tasks easier? If it's like, because if it's a part of your body, if it's something that you do, just
well, and I think that the economics point is a really good one, and unfortunately works in two directions. One is the cost of it, but also in terms of what you're going to get back, because I've talked before, and I think you guys have kind of similarly, that like, to me, I'm not always interested in fight scenes. There's a lot of other stuff I would love to see, but the fact is that a movie about people with superpowers using those superpowers to fight, the expectation is that's going to make a lot more money than a guy who works at the power plant, because he literally is the power plant, going through existential thoughts about how he feels about his job, while also dealing with relationship troubles and maybe a mother who's sick. Like the last thing I described, that sounds like an Oscar bait movie, and it could be a really good one, and I would be fascinated by it. But if you have to, it's probably not going to make enough money to justify all the scenes of animating him. And like one of the, So I think, and you're right. Comic books seem like a much better place for that. And I think we're getting to the point where, like in the Fantastic Four movie, I think there were a couple of times where we saw like powers used in very mundane ways. But it's never the focus. And honestly, the only show I can think of that's really done a study of this, and like the Olympics is a specific thing I mentioned, is The Boys. And even then, they've decided like most of what we're going to show you is how they use superpowers for sex, which is another like similar to fight scenes.
I mean, that's kind of the natural second.
Yeah. And like I love that show, and I think they do some great things, and I do think they do some stuff with the mundanity, but still there's a lot of world you can explore there.
Yeah, and that's my fantasy for the MCU. And because we talked about this back when Phase 4 was doing way too much post Infinity Saga. So I was like, man, like once the MCU becomes so big, then you can have that character study movie that just happens to have powers also. And like because there's all these other things that you can spend your time and effort on. Once you're so big, everyone just understands that's in this universe, then you can do those tiny little characters specific things. And I'm so excited about that potential. Are they ever going to go down that road? I doubt it, but like it'd be really cool if they did.
I mean, I think this show, I think there's an extent to which they can do it in shows better than movies, and it sounds like the show is definitely doing an element to that. Certainly, I think Star Wars has done a version of that with saying like, okay, we're going to give you a TV show that's basically the Goonies in Star Wars, with skeleton crew, and there's almost never a lightsaber, and we're going to give you Andor, in which there's pretty much never a lightsaber, So yeah, interesting stuff. Any other last stuff you guys want to talk about in terms of this first episode, or like comic book stuff that you're curious will or won't? Actually, wait, no, let me share that. So I got one last question I want to throw at you guys, and then we can kind of wrap up. I know that there definitely are a lot of ways in which this character is fairly different from the one of the comic books. We've discussed a lot of the things. Among other things, the character is not black in the comic book, which is a sort of thing that has gotten people annoyed in the past. I have done a number of podcast episodes about how stupid I think that is, but putting that aside, I've not heard any backlash to this show. And do you think in some ways, because I'm guessing there aren't a lot of people who have like Power Man tattoos and have been waiting all their life to see Power Man on screen. Do they kind of have some more freedom that they don't have a huge group of people who are going to be like, you got my comic book character wrong. This is not okay.
Yeah, nobody even noticed that this show came out.
One, there's like, I think I saw a poster.
Yeah, there's very little marketing, which is unfortunate, I think.
But also, I would pay to see someone who either has a Wonderman tattoo or is like, yo, Simon Williams is my boy. He's the best. He outdoes everyone else. And it's like, why? Like, I don't I don't get. I don't think he doesn't have for me, the level of intrigue as a character that would warrant him being one of my favorites. And he also just has like no on-screen paper time in the last decades. And he dies all the time. Like, so does Jean, and everyone loves Jean Grey. But like,
so what you're telling me is that even though there's that love triangle, if I go searching for the Power Man, the Vision fanfics, they're not going to be there.
Wonderman.
Sorry, if I go for Power Man is going to have anything because look at Luke Cage. But if I go for the Wonderman, the Vision, Scarlet Witch love triangle fanfics, that's not there.
Listen, I will never doubt the fan fiction community.
Yeah, I'm sure it's there, but it only comes up when Wonderman comes back from the dead or Vision gets his memories back or his emotions back, and that's happened twice, and that's it. Wonderman and Scar and Wanda was never gonna work.
I've got one more thing about the show that's kind of a little more tangentially related. So we learn I think what you're referring to about the, why we learn that Trevor Slattery is involved in this plot is he is working for Damage Control, which is an agency that's shown up in previous Marvel shows.
Well, hold on. We didn't learn
yeah.
that in episode 1, did we?
Oh, we didn't? Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's the opening scene of episode 2.
It's not a spoiler. Do you mind if I just?
I didn't want to know that, so yeah, I'm gonna actually say I don't think my audience will. So if you don't mind, let's hold off on that.
Okay,
it,
I just it's just this is. I guess I'll hold it for the next episode then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I'll do
Yeah,
this since I already know it. All right. So there's one somewhat spoilery thing that I know Steve wants to discuss. That is about something that happens in the first scene in the first scene in episode 2. So, any other last wrap up things you want to do before we go into that spoiler section?
No.
Cool. All right. Well, to any fans who want to get off the train now, of course, please check out this podcast, Superhero Ethics. Check out Hype is My Superpower, the awesome X-Men comic deep dive that these two do. Check out my other podcast, the Star Wars Generations podcast. And we will now have a slight spoiler for, well, a pretty big spoiler, but for something that happens pretty soon after episode 1 in 3, 2, 1. Trevor Slattery is working for Damage Control?
Yeah, he was contacted by Damage Control, and this is so it's pretty tangential. This is why I say it's hardly a spoiler, is because this is more about like what the show is than like a specific detail or like a gotcha reveal, right?
And for those of us who vaguely remember the name but don't know the exact details, certainly not comic book expert myself, what is Damage Control in the MCU?
In the MCU, Damage Control is kind of like your faceless evil government agency that purportedly is supposed to clean up after, all of the damage that these big destructive superhero fights do in public spaces. But as we've seen in Ms. Marvel show and other places, they're much more, what they actually spend their time doing is trying to get you. They're going to get you if you have superpowers. Right. And what we've seen, the structure of the show kind of follows that Trevor, through his handlers at Damage Control, is going through these increasingly convoluted methods to sort of like entrap or ensnare or otherwise apprehend Simon because he has superpowers and he's considered a threat. And I think this is the part where the show, more than anything about like anything else, the only part that this show like really lost me is in the real world, if the shady government agency wanted to get you, they'd just kidnap your ass off the street. Yeah. You would just they would just put a fucking bag over your head and no one would ever see you again. This is the world we live in.
People off the street.
And it was the only immersion breaking in this show was just understating the police state that we live in.
No, I get that. I'm about to start doing The Winter Soldier on Marvel Movie Minute, and hopefully both you guys will be able to come on as guests at some point. And I remember the first time I watched that movie, I liked it, but I thought it was kind of unrealistic because I was like, come on, America's never going to go for something this obviously like we're labeling the people we don't like domestic terrorists. We have to get them. And now I'm like, and then I watched it again like a couple days ago, 2 weeks into ICE invading my state. And I was like, and not just my state, my city and my neighborhood. I was like, oh, yeah, okay, this predicted the future a lot better than I thought it did. So yeah, I get that. All right, well, that'll be something interesting to look forward to. We will be coming back. This was kind of a special episode that we broke in with because I wanted to talk about the show as soon as it came out. Next Tuesday, our normal next Tuesday, when we normally have an episode come out, our episode will be on the full show. We'll have talked about all 8 episodes. So, and with these two guys again. So please come back for that. Thank you so much for listening. If you're a struggling actor, whether or not you are pro or anti comic book, let us know. We want to hear from you. If you're not a struggling actor, we just want to hear from everybody. So, write in, call in, send a carrier pigeon. If you're very good to that carrier pigeon. Actually don't, because I don't know how to be good to the carrier pigeon, and then I'll have a carrier pigeon in my house. That doesn't sound fun. So anyway, we got to go. And signing off, fuck ICE.
Fuck ICE.
Fuck guys.
And check out Streamer
All
Mats on
Yeah.
Will Freeland's TikTok.
Stay warm and stay brave, Matthew. Thank you for having us on here.
Thank you. Thank you.